Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your free ball in rock and roll and hosts working overtime.
I'm John, and I don't know why I let that intro through.
And I'm CC, and I know why, because I'm writing those damn things. Anyway, this is the show where we review all the anime series from the previous season we did and didn't watch start to finish. On today's episode, John will talk about the new season, series, spin-off, incarnation, question mark?
Spin-off.
Okay, of the popular slice of live anime working. And after that, I will venture into the colorful world of ice figure skating by giving you my thoughts on the new breakout hit Yuri on Ice. So since time is money and we are stingy jerks, let's head right into our reviews.
So yes, we're going back to work, as it were, with the fourth season of Working.
Man, work just ended for me. I don't want to go back. Make this enticing, John.
Too bad. Put on an apron and get in the kitchen.
Ah, fuck, not again.
So the new series is WWW Working, as in, obviously, World Wide Web, because it's a spin-off series. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was about to ask, is this about wrestling after all?
WWF. Excuse me, WWE.
Yes, close enough. I don't even know why they changed that. But that's besides the point. What is the point? Here's the point. Working. What is it about?
The point is we're going to start our own wrestling podcast, even though I know nothing about wrestling.
Yeah, that's a good starting point, I guess.
I mean, I know some stuff about, what is it called, Montreal Screwjob or whatever.
Yeah, I'm already monologuing 90% of the show, like of this show, way too much. So why not do a podcast that I completely narrate on my own? Anyway, yeah, that will drive the rest of the listeners we have away. I'm sorry. I totally didn't want to interrupt your story introduction there. So, yeah, please tell me about Working. I know nothing about this franchise.
So, basically, this particular incarnation is a sort of spin-off series after the original manga ended, created by the same lady, Karino Takatsu. And she wanted to take her work and make a web version. Mm-hmm. So it was serialized as Webbon Working, and the TV series became www.working! ! There's no .com in there.
So wait, is the only difference that the one thing was published as a webcomic and the other one wasn't, or is it like thematically different as in...
I mean, thematically it's mostly the same, but if you were paying attention to our preview a few weeks back, when I said something along the lines of familiar workplace with a new crew, I think I said. Basically, it's that. Apparently, the restaurant in the story, Wagnaria, is a franchise, which was not plainly apparent, and, there's a different location. So, basically, the story is about this kid, Daisuke Higashida. He's a high schooler, and when his family runs into financial troubles, he finds work as a waiter at this different Wagnaria. So, because obviously we can't reuse the whole, the old cast wholesale, because then it would just be Working season 4 as opposed to a new series. Seems like a typical sort of job. Except that the crew who work in the restaurant are anything but. So let's run down the roster. We've got a girl whose cooking is deathly awful, and during Valentine's Day, she says to Daisuke, "Try my chocolate," and he ends up almost making a trip to the pearly gates and meeting Saint Valentine himself.
Well, that's great. It's a great setup point for working at a restaurant when your cooking sucks. I mean, is she the actual cook, or is
she's one of the waitresses.
Oh, okay. Well, then please don't let her into the kitchen.
No. There's another girl who comes from a family of spirit mediums, and even though she doesn't believe in the supernatural, has regular interactions with them.
How does that work? If she sees the ghosts, she's ignoring them or something?
Well, there's this. They make a point of saying, "Oh, there's this, old man who comes into the restaurant, and you see her going over to this empty table with a glass of water. There's no one there.
Okay.
And then when she's away for a few days, there's like inside the bathroom, like it's all scratched up and whatnot, and it's like, oh, the spirits are very mad.
Yeah. Okay.
Next up, we have a boy who's from overseas, but he's born of Japanese parents, but he doesn't speak a word of the language, which makes for great, just amazing moments of miscommunication.
Especially if he has to take the orders. Let me guess. A lot of guests are getting the wrong food.
Not quite that. It's just that when he's trying to talk with the other characters, he gets like certain expressions wrong, and it changes entirely the meaning of what he's saying.
Oh boy.
So he's trying to say something and sound all sincere, but he gets like, one word wrong, and it's like, hold on, what?
So that's an interesting aspect. I guess a lot of that is based on, I don't know, not necessarily puns in Japanese, but word humor that maybe only works in the Japanese language, or is at least designed for that. So do the subs do a good work to bringing those jokes across? Like, do they take some liberties to make those jokes work?
I feel like with a couple of them, they did have to stretch a little bit, but
okay.
Let's see what else was there. There was this young mother who, working at the restaurant, but she just wants to laze about and do nothing. Good. All right.
I can relate to that.
There's this young man whose family is deeply in debt to one of his female peers, and that's a thing. It's one of those elements of the plot that's out there. And then you have the lackadaisical manager just can't keep any of the staff in line. And I mean, the thing with this show or the series is there's not like an overarching plot. It's more like individual character arcs.
Do those span like over multiple episodes, or is there like I don't know, the focus is on one character for one specific episode, and then we get another one and in the next episode and stuff like that?
It's more of like we see it play out in pieces across the span of the series.
Okay.
So it's like at one point you'll get, a little bit of ABC. At one point you'll get a little bit of XYZ. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, instead of, putting it all in one piece for each, character or like set of characters, they kind of, breadcrumb it out, and that's how they keep you there. By having it, interspersed through other bits of a character story. And I think it works pretty well. So it worked pretty well for the 3 series that came before it, too. So
is there some actual, I don't know, drama, some I don't know, deeper character development in there? Is it mostly, I don't know, comedic stuff?
I mean, I'd say about 75% of it is played for laughs. But there is, some actual character interaction there, especially when the author starts pairing the characters off and being like, hey, check this out, I can do shipping too.
Ah, okay.
and I mean, I feel like it's not really overplayed. It works out.
It feels natural.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So
I feel like, the cast is, very likable. It's a goofy show with a lot of, good sight gags and just stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The arcs do, like I say, come together in a pretty satisfying manner.
Is it like, I don't know, in terms of tone, is it more like big hijinks, or is it like small endearing comedic moments like maybe in Flying Witch or something, or is it like a bit
It's
more...
hijinks.
It's hijinks, okay.
It is hijinks.
All right. I mean, I Flying Witch had hijinks too, but they were like they feel really toned down and grounded in certain parts. So that's how I was wondering, is this more like this more loud comedic in your face approach, or is this a bit more subdued just in terms of feeling? that the show is getting across. So it's more cartoony, I guess.
Oh,
So
definitely.
In the direction of Dragon Maid, maybe?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll get to that show in, I don't know, a couple of episodes, I guess. Anyway, yeah, please.
I mean,
continue.
there are several things to say about Dragon Maid.
Yes, definitely. And we will, eventually.
Yeah, I mean, Takatsu also did... I guess she has another series running now called Dustbox 2.5 about this shut-in who becomes like a voice actor. I'm not too certain on the details, but it sounds like it could be a neat setup. One of her other series was Servant Service, which was adapted into an anime a few years back. And it was a lot of the same like hijinks sort of thing, except instead of being in a restaurant, it's like a local like government office, like a town hall type of thing.
Oh yeah, right. I remember you talking about that. That's also a show you enjoyed, and that I assume
definitely
that made you get into working in the first place because of.
Well, I got into working before Servant Service, and when I saw it was the same creator and whatnot, I was like, oh, okay, sure, why not?
So those shows have kind of the same vibe, and you would say if someone enjoyed Servant and Service, they would also enjoy working, probably?
Definitely.
All right.
And I feel like with this series of working, since it doesn't depend wholly on the material that comes before it, it's readily accessible. So.
Okay, cool. But you said there were...
Okay.
Wait, you weren't really clear on how much relation there is of this spin-off to its previous season in the sense that do characters from the previous show turn up for a cameo or something, or is none of that happening at all? Is it completely separate except for the two restaurants being like kind of related by being part of a bigger chain and everything?
I think I remember there was a moment where there was like a quick, like very brief, short cameo of the main character from the original series, and that was pretty much it. I mean, the other big link is, hey, it's the same restaurant, just a different location, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it feels more natural than in Love Live Sunshine, where you're like, well, those girls are just not here anymore, and you won't see them.
Oh, don't get me started on how dumb that was. There was a reason they did that. It was because all of the old voice actresses stepped down from their roles.
Yeah.
So that's why they didn't get them in there. But just the same was kind of like,
Okay. But there's nothing that jarring in
no,
web working.
It's just that, the characters, aren't there because they don't really need to be.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's okay. It's just, I was just wondering if there was any, like, cameos or anything, or any tighter relation to the show that came before it. Who's responsible for the animation production?
A1 Pictures.
Oh, well, that could go that could go either way. So how...
Here's the thing about A1 Pictures. Working is one of their meal tickets. No pun intended. It's that or Sword Art, and they have to get those things right.
All right.
And it looked fine for what it was, and I didn't feel like there was any like glaring animation issues. So, speaking of staff, it's directed by Yumi Kamakura, who's done a lot of like assistant directorial stuff on other things, but she did direct the third season of Working, so she has experience with it.
Cool.
And the music, which is very very sprightly, bouncy, happy as it should be. It's done by Masaru Yokoyama, who we might know from Your Lie in April, Interviews with Monster Girls.
Ah, yeah, there we go.
And Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the Working has, as far as, I've seen from its 4 seasons, it's had a pretty solid crew.
Sure sounds like it, yes. I really enjoyed the music in Iron Blood Orphans. Rest of the show is another topic for another time.
Uh-oh. Sounds like there's some consternation.
We'll see. many teasers in this episode. I wasn't really preparing for that, but still. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, the problem with I enjoyed this show and I enjoy working as a whole, but the problem about talking about it is now it's mostly just a comedy show that is played for laughs, and it is 4 seasons deep. So I feel like, having watched this much of it, it's hard to really say anything new or fresh about it.
Well, then, take it from the perspective of someone who hasn't watched any of the seasons. Like, what is the... I don't know, what's the most enticing thing about the franchise in itself, or what's the most engaging thing? Is the... what worked the most for you? Was it the comedy? Was it the character bits? Was it the cast in either one of, the shows? What made the show work for you?
I mean, what really made it work for me was the character interactions, because it's, like I said, a goofy cast, and like I said, it's funny. If you want something that you can just sort of laugh at, that sort of thing, because it's not like super high level humor. Anyone can get a chuckle out of it. Mm-hmm. It's worth watching for that, and for the fact that speaking of cast, both the original series and this one have a great voice cast of a bunch of familiar people. So
okay, and I assume, just from the sound of it, it's like it's got kind of an uplifting spirit. It's not something that ventures into cynical territory like Girlish Number does or something like that. So no. It's more, again, maybe like Love Life, a bit of comfort food, just in a different genre. And, very different setting.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So something light on the side. First you watch an episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans, and then you watch an episode of Working for the high contrast experience.
It's kind of like a few seasons back, more like a few years back, when it was like emotional whiplash watching Fate Zero, and then a few weeks later having an episode of Carnival of Phantasm. It's like, yay! And then going back to Fate Zero and be like, oh.
Still a great show.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. One last one. Would you rather, one start with the first Working or with Web Working? Like, which show as a complete newcomer would be, I don't know, more enticing, I think? Since you say it doesn't really matter in terms of story structure, because those two shows are not really related and are, more slice of life based. Like, which one did you enjoy more? Was it just on the same basic level, or would you say, maybe this is...
I feel like, in regard to that question, I'd probably go with the original, because, it was much longer and you have much more of an emotional attachment to that cast of characters.
So, I guess if you got some more time on your hands, go with the original. If you want to, get in the most recent new take on the franchise, check out Web Working. Right.
Like I said, if you're new to Working, it's still as accessible, just because, it is a different group of characters, and, if you like slice of life stuff in general, it's a good watch. It's fun. I think you'd get a few laughs out of it.
At the beginning of Yuri on Ice, we meet the protagonist Yuri Katsuki in a very uncertain phase of his life. Yuri is an ice figure skater, and he was Japan's big hope when competing in the big Grand Prix final ice skating competition. But sadly, he failed completely and at that event and ranked last place. I think not only in that one, but it's several others too. But that was the biggest one and his biggest failure. So that hurls him into a spiral of self-doubt, depression, and simply questioning if there is any future for him in ice skating, or if he even wants to keep pursuing it as a possible career or anything. So he ditches his coach, puts his training on hold, and concentrates on his studies, while attending a college in Detroit. That's not the worst thing, I guess, concentrating on your studies. But yeah, the first episode of the show starts with him returning to his hometown, Kyushu, after graduating. Still not exactly sure what to do with his life. And then things take a surprising turn when an impromptu training performance of Yuri is captured on video and finds its way to the Russian 5-time consecutive world champion, Viktor Nikiforov. Who, just as it happens, is Yuri's big role model and idol. So Victor, without warning, shows up at Yuri's doorstep in Japan and offers to become his coach. This also raises the ire of another young Russian figure skater called Yuri Plisetsky, who also wants to be trained by Victor. And he also shows up in Japan, and thus he and the Japanese Yuri become direct competitors for the World Championship and Victor. So yeah, that's basically the story setup of Yuri on Ice, and all of that pretty much happens in the first episode. And the show is produced by Studio Mappa, which have done a lot of stuff I like. One of the biggest things being Ushio and Tora, which I've already reviewed on our show. And I love that show to death. I think it's one of the best shonen shows out there. And they did a great reimagining of, and did a great job at bringing that old 90s style into the new age of anime. They also did Rage of Bahamut, which is a surprisingly good fantasy anime, despite it being based on a mobile game. They did Kids on a Slope. They did the anime for the Goro tokusatsu franchise, and they helped Madhouse with the third season of Hajime no Ippo. So lots of cool stuff on their roster, lots of good stuff they did. I always look out for what they're doing next. I wasn't that impressed with Days, their soccer anime, which should have been up my alley, or what, I don't know. Didn't really work for me in certain parts. So yeah, anyway, otherwise Mappa has become one of my favorite studios up to date. And yeah, the show is directed by Sayo Yamamoto. I think she also wrote the series together with Mitsuru Kubo, but I'm not so sure about that. She at least did the series composition, but I can never really tell how much that entails.
As far as I was aware, composition just entails how shots are put together and camera angles and stuff like that, as far as I knew.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, just in terms of who came up with the script and everything. So yeah.
As I had heard that Yamamoto had wanted to make an ice skating anime or manga for forever. So this was her big chance.
This is definitely a passion project, and you see that in every spot of the production. There's a lot of love put into this show, and she definitely wanted to put a lot of stuff in general in that show, and sometimes that turns out to be its detriment. But I'll get to that. She also directed Michiko and Hachin and the Lupin spin-off, A Woman Called Fujiko Mine, a show that I still need to check out. I always forget about that, but that's supposed to be super good, and I really want to watch that, especially after the fourth part, after I enjoyed the fourth Lupin series so much. And she was also an episode director and storyboard artist on a bunch of other shows like Space Dandy, Samurai Champloo, Eureka 7. So yeah, lots of cool stuff under her belt. And I can definitely say, in terms of direction, visual dynamics, production value, and everything, Yuri on Ice looks pretty damn great. Yes, if you take screenshots of certain still frames, you can definitely see that some of the episodes are bursting at the seams with off-model characters and are barely holding together. But in motion, the show is a treat. The skating performances are obviously the high visual high point of the shows of each episode. They're lavish. They got these lavish, elaborate routines with lots of detail put into the smallest gestures. There's a lot of emphasis on facial gestures and everything. So yeah, really, really great in the details and in motion. I really enjoyed that. You get crazy, constantly moving camera angles, which also is another good example for use of CG in anime for a change. I like to hate on CG in anime, but in this case, it's been used to great effect because the ice ring in those performance scenes is CG, if I'm not mistaken, which makes it easier to show a lot of zooms and panning shots, and the character spinning around in the ice ring, and that makes the whole thing look really energetic. And yeah, did a really good job on that. The visual comedy is also really snappy. And sometimes even a bit too overzealous / loud for my taste. But that it works, and there's some really good jokes in that show. The music by Taku Matsushiba and Taro Umibayashi, the latter also being responsible for the soundtrack of Space Dandy, is also great. You got a lot of different musical styles during the competitions because every ice skater chooses different song to perform to. And it's not always classical music. Sometimes you get a really nice riveting pop song in there. Sometimes you get a big, march with a lot of bravado and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of different musical styles in there. And of course the music not only plays during the competitions, especially Yuri's 2 signature songs are great. And I think they help to emphasize some of the big emotional moments in the show. So yeah, good work on the music too. Now, before I really dive into the depths with this one, I want to say that Yuri on Ice is a good show that does a lot of things right. Like I said, I enjoyed the visuals a lot. And the show depicts the blossoming romance between the 2 main male characters as something heartfelt, earnest, and completely normal, which is super commendable in my opinion. I think especially the latter thing resonated with a lot of people in the LGBT community. And of course, the ice skating theme resonated with some people.
Yeah, I guess even some actual skaters were getting in on it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. If you check Twitter while the show was airing, there were actual, people from the ice skating sports going crazy over it, which is fantastic in my opinion. And I always like when anime, gets outside its own wheelhouse and catches the attention of the quote unquote mainstream audience like that. That's great. And it was fun seeing those people gush over the show. I think that's really cool, and it shows that show spoke on many different levels to a lot of different people. However, that's why I'm kind of afraid of this review, because it's this super beloved monster hit now. I personally came away from the show feeling pretty lukewarm on it, and I can mostly attribute that to going into the series with the wrong expectation. As you know, I like sports anime, and since this show is about ice figure skating, I went into it thinking, hey, I don't care about ice skating in real life, but maybe, just like with Yomamushi Pedal, for example, anime can make that sport more interesting for me and, show me something about it that I didn't know and stuff like that. So yeah, I wanted to check it out, definitely. But Yuri on Ice is not a sports anime. Not really. At least it's not what I'm searching for when I seek out those kind of shows. Yuri on Ice its focus is mostly on its 2, maybe 3 main characters if you want to count the Russian Yuri. But mainly it's about Yuri Katsuki and Victor developing as characters, developing a loving relationship, and finding their way in life, and getting to these moments of self-reflection and understanding each other, understanding himself and stuff like that. It's basically those, not really a coming of age story because they're already kind of adults, but still it's finding a new place for each other in life, together and on their own and everything. So that's what this show is about, and getting to the core of their emotions and their feelings for each other and stuff like that. So this is really more a romantic comedy / drama with an aside of sports. than the other way around. I think if I had known that beforehand, I would have approached the show quite differently, if at all, because as you know, I'm not really a fan of romantic comedy. However, for you...
I mean, that's kind of my jam.
Yeah, exactly. This might actually make the show more interesting for you, because I know you don't really care about sports anime, but you love your romantic comedies, if I'm not mistaken. You watch a lot of those, right?
Probably a little too much.
Yeah, well, to each their own, but I don't know. I assume you didn't watch Yuri on Ice, right?
No, but I mean, I saw some clips of it, of like the actual skating bits, and I was really taken aback with the quality of like the choreography and whatnot.
Yeah, it looks, like I said, it looks fantastic. And maybe me actually saying that the focus is more on the comedy aspect and then the romance aspect, maybe you want to check out the first episode and see if it clicks with you, because that show might actually be, after all, more up your alley than mine. I mean, the figure skating is a dominant factor, but it's not the focus of the show. Even, it's used as a vehicle to convey certain emotions and to develop and expand on the, feelings of certain characters and the inner workings of them. But it's not really, like, the competition itself is not the focus of the show. Like, it's in other sports anime, usually. Mm-hmm. And that was my problem with it, and that might be what would make the show maybe for you and, other people who are more into that kind of genre more interesting. But yeah, let me dive deeper into why the sports aspect of the show didn't work for me, and then I'll get to why I had some problems with the emotional components too. So, like I said, I know shit about ice skating, which is my fault, I guess. But, some sports anime give you some guidelines in the beginning on how the sports work in basics and everything, so that if a character is performing well or is in a dire situation or something. And that, makes you relate more to their peril or, the competition itself and makes it more interesting and makes it more thrilling and everything. And Yuri on Ice doesn't really do that. Yes, there are commentators for the events who mention, what certain things are called, this is this kind of jump, and that's what this character doing, and he's gonna get high points for that and stuff like that. But since I have no idea how the scoring system in itself works in that sport, and since all of the performances look equally aesthetically stunning to me, like all of them look great, so unless the characters missed a jump or slipped and fell, I had no idea how they were actually faring in terms of the competition. So at the end of each competition, I look at the scoreboard and say, okay, I guess that's right. I wouldn't know. What also kept me from getting really emotionally engaged in the actual performances is that it's not really a direct competition. How ice skating works is the skaters perform and get scored one after another. So there's not really a face-to-face confrontation like you have in, team sports and, some fighting sports like boxing or anything. You could argue that that's the same for stuff like Food Wars, which is kind of also feels a bit like a sports anime or a fighting anime, which I mentioned before. And, the characters in there face off against each one after another and get scored one after another too. So you could say, hey, that's the same. Why do you like that show? But Food Wars, the presentation in that show is so outlandish that, despite it being an indirect competition kinda, it pulled me in anyway. So, because it was so over the top, it was so dramatic. And Yuri on Ice is much more grounded and realistic. Like, it really tries to depict this sport in a realistic way. And apparently there were some performances in there that are super hard or even impossible to pull off in real life. But just, from the presentation, I wouldn't know that. And yeah, also since this is basically a series of competitions, the characters perform pretty much the same routine with the same music in every show. So even if it looks great, and the music is nice and everything, and the actual outcome of the competition might be, different in the end or for each episode, the performances themselves get a bit stale after a while. So, it's, if you go from it from the sports angle, it's like, okay, if I don't know anything about ice skating, this isn't really thrilling because I have no idea what's going on. And I can't really feel where this is going in certain parts. Unlike, the characters or the commentators tell me, and that's kind of Now, as for the emotional component, that's where the series shines on paper because of this, mostly because of the sweet and heartfelt tale of Victor and Yuri becoming a couple. You also got a lot of colorful side characters who, with interesting personalities. The show is very, in itself, just in terms of this cast and characters, very colorful. There's a lot of, stuff happening, a lot of funny dialogue here and there. So yeah, and, some emotional flashbacks, some really dramatic moments when it comes to characters conveying their emotions through their performance and everything. So yeah, that all works on paper. The problem lies in how the show decides to depict certain emotional key moments. Jeff Thew from Mother's Basement did a better analysis on this than I could ever hope to do, but I want to bring up this point nonetheless. Sometimes the need of the show to put, so much stuff in a few minutes of screen time makes the different elements clash with each other. There are scenes where we have emotional confrontations that are intersected by scenes from a competition, for example, and that takes away from instead of enhancing each other. Like, there's interruptions in terms of, okay, we're cutting away now from this moment that should be the main focus of the scene. And no, we're trying to contrast that with the competition that our character is having or the performance he's showing. And, that takes away from the moment in itself, from the emotional core of the moment. And yeah, that's also a problem I felt with the show. It felt sometimes like it was lacking focus in certain parts, just in terms of, the direction in those emotional moments. Also, parts of in the show feel like it really needed twice the number of episodes. Like, this is most noticeable in the side characters who, like I said, were, cool and sympathetic and everything, but we mostly learn about them monologuing during their performances, which first isn't really necessary in the first place, because a lot of what they're going through is conveyed through, through gestures, through facial gestures, to body movement and everything. So they didn't really need to narrate over it, but they still do it anyway, which again sometimes takes away from the emotional impact. And second, that doesn't really develop them beyond that one point of crisis or self-discovery in that one scene we're seeing. So yeah, I feel like this show really, really, really needed some time to set down and let some of its moments breathe instead of jumping to the next dramatic performance or comedy bit or romantic scene. It sometimes feels really like hectic and when it shouldn't. And I assume Sayo Yamamoto, was worried that she wouldn't get more episodes and wanted to cram everything she wanted to put into this passion project of hers into that one 12-episode season. And that's understandable, but in my opinion, it shows and feels really rushed in certain parts. And apparently it wasn't necessary because the show was a big breakout hit, which I think it would have been if some parts of the show would have been, would have given their time to breathe still. So she, could have paced that a bit better. But yeah, all those different aspects kept me from falling in love with the show, like so many other people did, which kind of bummed me out because I wanted to love it. With each episode, I waited for that moment that I could really connect to, but it just didn't happen. And after each new episode, and seeing the positive reactions, each week on Twitter and other places and on forums and reading some of the raving reviews, I questioned myself, like, what's wrong with me? Everybody loves this damn show. Why don't I love it? I don't get it. I should like this. The sports angle, the characters are cool and everything, but it just... the sparks are not flying. I think I kind of found my answer of why it didn't work for me, or at least partially. And I hope I could bring it across with this review. I hope the fan base doesn't come after me with torches and pitchforks. I'm sorry. I really am.
I mean, it's just one of those things. You didn't get exactly what you expected going in. So if anyone gets mad at you, screw them. There's no reason to get mad at someone's opinion.
Yeah, well,
I mean, this is the internet.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't that a nice guideline that you should set up before? Welcome to the internet. Don't get mad about opinions. Oh man, that would make things much better, I guess, if people actually listen to it. Anyway, I still liked certain aspects of the show quite a lot. Like I said before, I liked the presentation. I liked some of the characters were really sympathetic and nice, but I couldn't connect to its emotional core that well. Also, I didn't like how the show wrapped up. At least parts of it wrap up bothered me, because anime in general has a problem with committing to its relationships in certain ways. And that's even more prevalent with shows that feature LGBT characters, I think, where there's a lot of teasing and, not really saying, these characters are a couple and these characters are actually completely in love. And it's not just, maybe, we won't say it, but we know if you look at it, it's pretty obvious. We just won't say it. And I'm like, why won't you say it? Fucking say it!
Because it's a death flag. It's always a death flag.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there are some reasons for it, and it's I won't dare to even be the judge of if that is justified or if that is how it should be approached. But I'm just saying that's stuff that bothers me, in anime. Like I said, not only with LGBT characters, but I've seen it with regular romances too, where it's like this.
How it's more of a will they, won't they sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's heartfelt, it's honest, but it doesn't fully commit. Mm-hmm. And by the end, there's always this, okay, there's this loophole we're using, and we're not really going all the way. And I felt like Yuri on Ice was like that in parts too. You could argue that, hey, this show is committing to the relationship of its characters in everything but in specific text or words. It's all in the subtext. It's so obvious. It's so completely clear. But still, I want it spelled out. I want it said. I want it on the screen. I want the characters say what, specifically say the important words. And if they don't do that, I'm like, something is missing. Why won't you commit to this?
You mean a couple other shows we're probably going to talk about?
Yeah, I think I have something that that especially you're going to talk about. I think a show I don't know that much about, but I've heard about that show having problems with commitment to in that regard. So anyway, yeah, that was just a pet peeve of mine. I have some weird pet peeves with anime. There's another one that's gonna come up when we review Dragon Maid. I've already made notes for that. But still, yeah. This is one of them. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people just won't even notice that and don't care. I'm judging from the reactions on Twitter and the reviews and everything, I can already say that with absolute certainty that some people don't give a shit about that and are super happy with how the series turned out and everything and how it wrapped up. So that's super cool. That's fine. I'm really happy for those people. I just, wanted to explain why that kind of bothered me a bit. So yeah, anyway, please, if you love romantic comedy, check out this show. If you like ice skating, check it out too. I also urge you to watch Mother Spaceman's video on how some aspects of the show could have been improved. I agree with pretty much all of the points brought up in that analysis video. And I will link to that in the episode description of the show. I also put up a link to episode 258 of the ANN cast, which discusses the LGBT aspect of Yuri on Ice and many other shows and manga. It's it's a great discussion on the subject matter and really worth listening to, in my opinion. So yeah, Yuri on Ice, beloved mega hit that will probably get a sequel or something, which a bunch of people will watch, and rightfully so. I just won't be one of them. And that is a wrap on the 25th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and animebrainfreeze.com. Leave us comments and questions anywhere you like, or send us an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
Remember to tip your waitresses, and good night.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
We'll be banding together to be the best brass musicians we can.
And a fan service fight fest that might just Shoryuken its way out of the trash stand.